So what we're going to try to do is create like a little NPC character and attach a dialogue script and just kind of go over the basics. So one thing for this is that the dialogue system that I used to use, it still exists, and it's actually a very robust dialogue system. It's called Dialogic, but it has a lot of bugs. Oh, I spelled it wrong. It has a lot of bugs that are kind of making it not work with the current version of Godot, the sort of new version of Godot, Godot 4, which was released earlier this year. So this is what I used to use, but it's really, I have barely been able to get it to work at all. So I think they're still kind of working through a new release for this. But I found another plugin that is much simpler, and in some ways I think actually better, because it's very simple, so I think it's easier to use in some ways, but it does also have a lot of features. So we're going to use that instead, and at some point, if Dialogic works a little bit more stable, that would be another good thing to check out. But because of that, I had to write a new script to work with this new platform. And so if you've downloaded the scripts at the sort of beginning of the semester, you'll have to re-download at least this new script. So I'm going to open that up real quick. And so in the scripts folder, I created a new NPC script. And it's really not an NPC script. It's really just a dialogue script. You could really attach this to anything. It could be like a tree or a sign or anything. So I should probably rename this. But I originally created it for an NPC, so that's kind of stuck there. But anyway, you can see this script here. And really, we just need this script. But you can also download the other scripts if you want to, with the sort of like caveat that if you've updated or changed any of the scripts and you copy these scripts in there, you may lose those changes. So make sure that if you've done anything with the other scripts, that you make sure to keep those changes before you update anything. Anyway, I'm just going to download this zip file. So I'll download all the scripts, but I'm just going to move the one new script over. So I'm going to take this NPC dialogue script. I'm going to copy that. And then I'm going to go to my game scripts folder and just paste it in there. And I think it's got everything I need. I think I made an update to the player script as well, but I don't know. I don't think it really affects this at all. No, I don't think it affects this at all. So we might have to come back here, but I think we'll be good. So anyway, so I've got that script, but what I need to do before I can use it is create or add in my plugin. I also have some art that I created just to not have to spend time on that. I just created a little bird character. I just really made a very simple sprite. It really can be anything, anything that you want to have in your game that has dialogue. It can be, a person, it can be an animal, it can be a tree, it could be a sign. You can really attach it to anything you want in your game. Okay, so let's add the plugin. So to add a plugin, I just have to click on the asset library tab. So the top sort of tabs up here. We haven't used this one yet, but there's this asset library tab. And we're going to look for this specific plugin. And this plugin is called Dialog Manager. It's spelled in the British way with the UE at the end. So that might be a little confusing. The American spelling is just dialogue without the UE at the end. So in my scripts, I tend to use that. But this script, I guess, was created by a British person or maybe a Canadian person. Anyway, so it has the UE there. But that's what it looks like. It has this little dialogue bubble. And we can click on this and we can see some information about it. And, we could preview it. I'm going to go ahead and download it. And there's a couple things that we have to do once we download it. So you just download it. It goes pretty quick. And right now, nothing has changed. We don't really see this new option because we haven't enabled it yet. So we have to remember to go to our, I forget if this is project settings. Yeah, project settings and then plugins. You'll see this new Dialog Manager plugin, and we just click Enable here. Gonna hit OK. And there we go. So there's a new dialog window over here. And so when we go here, this is the sort of interface through which we can add our dialogues and manage and write the dialogues. And one thing you might notice is there's like a little green thing over here that says there's an update available. So there's more recent versions of this that have been published that haven't been added to the asset library yet. So if you see that and it looks green, just click on that and it's just gonna download an update, and we'll just reload the project. And that might not make a huge difference, but you know, it's good to make sure that our features are up to date. So now that's up to date. Another thing over here is if we click on this docs button, it'll take us to the GitHub page for this project. And this is really useful because it has a lot of information about the project, and it also has some videos that the creator made talking about how to use the plugin. If you watch some of these videos, it will look a little bit different because they're from an older version, but it should basically map everything that you're working on. And so I'm going to cover a lot of what's covered in this like beginner video. I'm not going to cover some of the more advanced stuff, but there are other videos here that will help you with that. And I am going to cover a couple things that are not in here because this is obviously just for the plugin. I'm going to look at how we can add this into our scene in the projects that we're working with. Okay, so we've got our plugin. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create a really simple dialogue, and then we'll just create a little NPC character to attach it to. I'm going to try to do this relatively quickly, but there are a few steps. And the thing that I actually really like about this plugin versus the other Dialogic plugin is that you just actually type out the dialogue. So it's a little bit more challenging because you have to learn some syntax, but it's a lot simpler of an interface to use because I can just like type out whatever I want to show up. So to create a new dialogue, I just click on this little plus button here, and we're going to create a new folder for this. So I'm going to create a folder called Dialog, not with a UE because I'm American, but that's okay. And the file type that it saves is .dialog with a UE. So it's a little confusing, but that's okay. So I'm just going to call this my bird NPC dialog and click OK. And when we create it, it gives us a little example of how to create a dialogue. So there's a few things here we can see with the syntax that are useful. And then there's also this little insert button. So if you forget how to do something, if you click on the insert, it'll kind of add stuff in there for you. So for example, if you like forget how to make the dialogue end, you can just go to insert and click end dialogue, and it'll put that syntax in there for you. So a couple things. So this little tilde, the little squiggle sign, that essentially means that a dialogue starts here. So it's like the opposite of end. And that's really useful because I can go to another part of my dialogue. So notice this option right here. There's this little equal sign arrow thing, and it goes to this is the node title. So that will take me back to the beginning of this dialogue, but I can also go to a new dialogue branch. So that allows me to put a bunch of different dialogues in the same file. So I can put a new dialogue down here that's like, conversation 2 or something like that. And then I can lead the character to conversation 2. So that's good for like making more complex stuff. So that's the starting point. Then basically whatever you want the characters to be called, you just say whatever you want them to be called and then a colon and then the dialogue that you want. This syntax shows like adding some different options. I think it'll just choose a random option. And then this syntax shows giving the player different choices. So if I put a little dash here, this will give the player a choice, and whichever choice the player clicks on takes me to this new part of the dialogue. So if I do this choice, I'll go down to here. If I do this choice, I'll go to here. And then this choice will start over, and this choice will end the conversation. And so we can sort of design a conversation. I'm going to make one really, really simple. So I'm just going to delete this. I'm just going to call this start. So this is the starting point in my dialogue, and that's going to be important. We're going to need to know that later. So I'm going to have my bird say hello, and then my cat is going to say hi, and then my bird is going to say, or let's say, how are you feeling? And then we'll give the cat a couple options. The cat can say, I am happy, or the cat can say, I am sad. And then the bird response will go here. And so we have to tab over to give the response. So the bird can say, I'm happy too, or the bird can say, that's too bad, and frowny face. This is obviously just a simple example. I can route those options to other places, or I can just like continue with the dialogue from there. So then I can have this cat say, okay, goodbye. And then whenever I want to end my dialogue, I can just go to the end. So there's a lot more options of stuff you can do. You can like put variables in here and give the player, you can get keys or get points or get objects from different characters. You can save progress. There's a lot of other stuff that you can do, but we're just going to stick with these like very, very basic settings. So I'm going to save this, and so now I have this little dialogue resource down here. And so that's what I'm going to use to load into my scene once I have a little NPC to talk to. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to create a little NPC, connect the dialogue, and then we'll maybe talk about a couple other things. So I'm going to make my NPC really quickly. This is very similar to a process that we've done a bunch of times already. So I'm not going to go into too much depth here, but I'm basically just going to make a new scene. And like a lot of the other scenes for things that we interact with, like enemies, rewards, projectiles, we want to know sort of like when we've entered the NPC area. So we're just going to start with an area. There's a lot of different ways you could organize this. Actually, let me double check the script and make sure I'm using the right. Yeah. Okay, so it's an area. So you could organize this in different ways, but you would have to, the script has to be attached to an area to know when the character has entered the area. So we're going to call this our NPC. I'm going to save this into scenes and then components, and I'll call this bird NPC. And so I'm going to add a little animated sprite to give this a animation. So I'm just going to do some new sprite frames. I'm not even going to make different animations for this. You could have the animations react to different states if you wanted to. That's more advanced. I'm just going to make just the most basic thing. I'm just going to put this bird sprite in here. And I just made a couple different states, so it's just going to be kind of like doing some different stuff. I'm going to make it autoplay and loop. And that looks fine. It's kind of like doing a couple things. I'm going to slow it down just so it's not quite as active. Anyway, so you could really do a lot more with this. I'm just going to kind of move on from here. So next we need a collider for our area. So I'm going to do a collision shape 2D. And this collider, wherever the player sort of enters, is going to trigger either the dialogue or something that sort of says, like, do you want to have the dialogue? So there's a couple options there. So you can choose how big you want this to be and what shape. I'm going to go with a circle, and I'm going to make it pretty big so that once the player gets pretty close to this little bird character, will trigger that dialogue. Another thing that you can do in the script, and this is sort of optional, so you might skip this step, is you can have a label. And a label is a little UI thing. We haven't really gone over a lot of UI stuff, and we will talk about it more next week. But we can add a little label in here that essentially will, prompt the user to do something to interact with the text. So I can put some text here, like hit enter to talk to the bird. That's probably too much. I'm just going to say hit enter to talk. And then I'm going to move this over like that maybe. And maybe put it up or below. You can kind of decide. And again, this label thing is kind of optional. I'm going to go over more UI stuff later, so there's more stuff that you could do with this design-wise, but I'm really just doing something that's really simple. And then whatever we put here, we're going to want to match to the input key that we use for our dialogue. So let's set that up, and then I'm also going to just attach the script and take a look at that. So I'm going to click on the main node from my NPC. I'm going to go to the script and click load and find my NPC dialogue script. And we're going to see there's a few properties that we can set here. So if we click on the script, you can see there's a few things that we need to add in here. So we need the dialogue resource. We need what the dialogue starts on. So that's why we need to remember the name of the dialogue. So you can change that if you want to. And then we can set whether we want the dialogue to just start as soon as we enter the NPC area, or do we want to trigger to start the NPC dialogue. So the trigger is set to true. That's a default. You can turn it off. If you have it set to true, you do need to have this start dialogue in your input map. So let's add that now. So I'm going to go to project settings, input map, and I have a bunch of inputs. I'm just going to add a new one. So I'm going to call this start dialogue. And really, you can call this whatever you want. You would just have to change the code. And I'm going to set this to enter. And you can also obviously change this key if you want to as well. Okay, so we're almost ready to go, actually. I am getting an error here. It's saying my dialogue manager doesn't exist. And I think I know why that is, because I think I need to add it to my auto load. Let's see. Actually, I kind of forget. Let's look at the documentation for a second. Hopefully they'll tell us what we need to do. Okay. Let's go back to here. Maybe the FAQ. Let's see, settings maybe. I think it should just add it in there. Okay, let's Google it. Dialogue manager. Not declared in current scope. Okay. Let's just keep going, and we'll come back to this when we need to. So there are a couple things that we need to set up here. So if we click on the NPC, let's add this into our level. So I'm going to go to scenes, go to levels. I'm going to go to level 1, which is the level that I have. Or actually, let's go to level 2. Oh, I don't have anything in level 2. Let's go back to level 1. Okay, so I'm just going to throw the NPC in here somewhere. So I'm going to click on the link node to add the scene. So I have my bird NPC. I'm going to click open. And I'm going to click F to find that. Oh, I forgot I moved my guy over to this other island. So here's my bird NPC right here. And then if we click on the bird NPC, actually this is where we're going to really need to fix that error. We'll see some properties here, but we don't